This session is focusing on change management. So I think ideally what we need to appreciate is what do you mean when you talk about change? Yeah. So the people tend to argue to say the only thing that not doesn't change is the change itself, but everything tends to change. You just have to look at your age, for example, from the time we are young up to now, for example. Yeah, so you might have gone through some kind of changes from the time we were born to the time we are now. Sometimes, if you look at myself, for example, when I was young, I had no these white beards. Yeah, but in all the same, things have changed. Even the way I was looking, the face could be the same, but maybe I've grown fat and all that. So we will not accept that I'm aging. So in short, I'm changing. So this kind of change has to be managed. So from where you were to where you are now and to where you are going, you should be looking at there's a lot of change that has happened, and also to up to where you are now, and also or where I am now, and also there will be a lot of change that is going to happen maybe in future. There were moments like I could run for a long distance, but nowadays I cannot do that. Yeah, there were moments whereby I can be able to play the whole day. Maybe I could do sleep the whole night. But these days, maybe it's very, very possible. There was a time I would sleep during the day, but maybe these days it's not possible because of the numerous challenges or the kind of responsibilities that I have now. Maybe I have to go around. And so these are some of the changes that happen in one's life. And also, you can be a bachelor to a moment whereby you can be married. And also, sometimes you can be a widow or a widower, or sometimes you can be a single parent. A lot of things tend to change in our life, so we should be able to accept. We change changes, we change different things. Yeah, you stop from drinking, for example. So these are some of the changes that tend to happen within our space. Even the way what kind of things you were liking before might not be the same things that you are liking now. So even in organizations, such kind of changes tend to happen within the organizations. So this is one of the things that we need also to appreciate within the organizations, to say organizations tend to go through numerous changes within when they are in this kind of in any sector. For example, could be health sector, agriculture sector, could be agriculture, healthy, education, water sector, energy sector, any sector. There are numerous changes that happens within that kind of sector. So we need to understand to say organizations tend to change, and also due one maybe due to the coming in of even the millennials, the Generation Z, and also the new generation that is coming in. They are more sophisticated compared to those people who were there before. For example, issues of the millennials, the new technologies that are coming, the new systems of doing things, the new there are so many things that are changing within the world. And also, if you focus on issues pertaining to pandemics, for example, you talk about the COVID-19, for example, the disasters that are there, that we didn't had such kind of disasters maybe before, but the extent of the damage might not be as it was before. So we can talk a lot of things due to environmental degradation and other things. We have affected the a number of things in this life, and maybe that's why we're experiencing all these disasters. So those are some of the changes that the world, the way it was, the number of trees that were there, they're not same numbers which are now. In fact, where people are building houses might not be the same as where people used to build houses. Some areas which were reserved, so nowadays you find that there is now a house. And also maybe across the rivers, you might find that people have built houses there and all that. So these are some of the things that you need to be able to appreciate, that the changes tend to happen everywhere. And but when we need to appreciate is what is it that needs to change within our organization. So you might look at the systems, the processes within our organization. Those are some of the things that what needs to change. Yeah, so we might need to change in the way we do our things within the organization as we are responding to the number of things that are there. But also at the same time, we might need also to think of who should we change within our organizations, because sometimes you might look at this thing needs to change, but also you cannot change that particular process without the changing the line of thinking of the people that are in that particular organization or that are managing that kind of processes. So that's also very, very important for us to appreciate, to say who should change, and also at the same time we should also be able to appreciate why should we change. We can change because we want to look at to say how do we respond to our customers, how do we compete with our competitors, yeah, how do we improve our services. Yeah, so that's the reason why you need to, and even when to change. For example, you might look at the certain companies, maybe in the telecommunication industry, for example. Yeah, someone can introduce something, someone has to respond. In the bank sector, someone can introduce something, others, the mobile application, for example. When a certain company had produced, another company had to join in and be able to produce that. So these are some of the things that we need to be able to appreciate. You need to scan the environment and be able to appreciate and be able to respond to such kind of changes. And also, if you look at the whole spectrum, you might look to say what can trigger change. Sometimes is the political environment. Once the political environment has changed, there are certain things which you might not be able to change. I remember what Bingu Mutharika had said one time when he took over government, I think from Bakiri Muluzi. I think he was asked by BBC to say, how are you going to manage these people? Yet they are the same. I think it was do with the cabinet ministers who say, how are you going to manage these cabinet ministers whom we have appointed, who most of them were still with the old regime, which you were against or you have been against, and how sure are you going to work with them and they are going to work to satisfy your vision? And the Bingu Mutharika responded to say, they have to change their eating habits, yeah, because the environment has changed. Yeah, the political environment has changed, so they have to change their eating habits. So assuming they were collapsed, they have to stop to be collapsed. That's why even that time some ministers had to be arrested maybe a few months just after being sworn in. So that's kind of the changes that we're talking about in the political environment. Political could be even changing leadership. Yeah, for example, you can have a new CEO, you can have a new director, or you can have a new manager and all that. So such kind of change, when you have changed jobs, for example, you should be able to appreciate that each and every person will come with a different approach of leadership, different vision, different style of leadership and all that. So you should also look at the economic environment, for example, changes in the interest rates, the exchange rates, among other things, can also be able to affect you as an organization. And also you look at the social aspect, yeah, issues of the gender, same-sex marriages, for example, LGBTIs. If you look at all that kind of spectrum, you can also change the way you are able to manage your organization. And also at the same time, if you look at issues pertaining to the legal environment, for example, the changes in the law, yeah, could be able to lead to some changes within the organization. There's certain things which you need to be able to comply. I'll give an example. In the HR space, for example, there was a change in the pension, for example. Yeah, so such kind of things you should also be able to impact you as an organization. And how do you manage that? Yeah, the changes in the parental leave, for example. Yeah, at first parental leave was not mandatory, but nowadays it's mandatory. So such kind of changes, for example, should also be able to lead to you to change the way you are doing your things. And also at the same time, when you want to do any kind of change, you should be able to look at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats. So this is what we call the SWOT analysis. You should be able to do the SWOT analysis for your organization to appreciate what kind of things have to change within your organization. That's very, very important for you to also appreciate. And also at the same time, what we also need to appreciate is to say, when you have done the SWOT analysis, based on the SWOT analysis, you can be able to define to say, I think in this kind of, we have got this kind of strengths as an organization and this kind of weaknesses as an organization, and but at the same time we've got these opportunities and threats. So you develop your strategies depending on the change process in light of such kind of the known strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and the threats. Yeah, so that's what is very, very important within the organization. And also if you are maybe in the private sector, could be in the NGO sector, in the public sector, everyone, you have customers. So you should be able to look at your customer desires, what they want. I'll give an example. Like most government institutions, maybe people nowadays might prefer an online application. They don't have to go there and feel like a hard copy, for example. So you should be able to look at that and be able to meet the customer's desire. So you change to introduce technology to meet the customer demand, because the customers are there and they want to respond to you. And also, I'll give an example, in the various businesses, you might find that people now, they want items to be delivered to their homes. Yeah, so you might need to introduce such kind of services that are also meeting the requirements of people in such kind. But also at the same time, people would like to shop, for example, in one place. So introduction of supermarkets would be ideal, because nowadays customers, they don't want to move different shops to get their items. So the changes in the appetite, for example, changes in the styles, age, all these things can have an impact on your products and what kind of products you should be able to produce. Yeah? So you might look at Malawi as an economy that has mostly the youth. So you might need to look more for, because the youth are more, so you might need to have products which are also meeting the needs of the youth. So that's what is very, very important within the organization. So you should be able to look at you should be able to meet the appetite of your customers, to say what kind of customers am I dealing, what do they like, what don't they like, and all that. So you should be able to change your products to suit such kind of customers, for example. And also, so that's what we're talking about, creating such kind of a response to the customer's needs. And also at the same time, you might need to have people who are going to motivate the change within your organization. So each and every department, you might need to have what we call either change champions. You might have to have a change consultant who should be able to guide you on what areas you should change, and you can have change champions or change ambassadors who are going to promote innovations within their departments to respond to the customer's needs, to respond to the political environment, to respond to the economic environment, to respond to the legal environment, having looked at your strengths, your weaknesses, and also taking into account of the opportunities and the threats which are in your organization. So that's what is very, very important. But what is key, the head of an institution should be the key ambassador for the change, because it starts from top. So top management should be the leaders in ensuring that change is being promoted. Yeah. So also they also do support such kind of changes which are going, the organization is going to take to respond to the environment. And also, I think you might meet, whenever you are trying to implement whatever changes you might be there, you might find that you're meeting a lot of resistance. So resistance sometimes tend to come because of issues to do with, for example, lack of knowledge, or the lack of engagement, that the people, you have changed some things but you didn't engage the employees, for example. You didn't train them on what, maybe after the change there are new technologies, new systems, new procedures. So people are used to the old systems, the old procedures, so but they don't know how now to migrate from those old way of doing things. You remember we had the issues of when we were having the copy typists. It was difficult for them maybe to move to the computer age. So it was difficult for them. Even nowadays with the computers and all that, the role of a secretary, for example, for a manager, for a director, maybe for whosoever, is changing. Yeah. So you should also be able to appreciate what is now the role of this kind of positions. So you should be able to mitigate that and be able to have a plan on how these people now can be utilized. So there will be maybe records management officers and all that who are able to manage the records of the departments, for example. Yeah. So the role has changed to an extent that people can just make a call nowadays, just straight to meet the boss. If the boss is not there, it's not there, people are able to know that in advance because they have just talked directly to the boss. So these are some of the things that they need to also to appreciate, that people can be able to resist to change. But how do you manage such kind of resistance? Yeah. And there are moments whereby an organization, for example, would be looking to say, no, we are not going towards the right direction. And they might be thinking to say, no, there are some things we need to change. And now people have got what they call the turnaround strategy. So you might have to develop a turnaround strategy for the organization to ensure that maybe you have changed the way of you doing things, but you're trying to refocus on the other areas, which are also very, very important. Yeah. So you are changing in focus in terms of what you had to prioritize. Now you have to take a different direction and prioritize different things. So maybe you might need to take new things and drop some other things, yeah? So even modify the old things and be able to move with the modified versions of those particular things. You might well have to appreciate to say, as a country, for example, even worldwide, we are moving from a time whereby we are using a lot of wood, for example. Yeah, I'll give an example. There was a time maybe we were using a lot of wood for our furniture and among other things, even roofing, windows and all that, doors, yeah. But we have moved away from that. Now we went to a stage where we moved out of that and we went to a stage whereby we used to using steel, for example, yeah. So that era I can say is now, but also you see in a way moving away. Now people are going more into aluminium. Maybe for roofing, people are moving away from wood to steel, for example. So you might think of to say, I have a furniture company, for example. How? But I've been doing wood, or I'm a carpenter, for example, but I've been doing a lot of roofing, for example. I'm an expert in roofing, but using wood. You might need to reskilling, yeah, we call it reskilling. You have to reskill yourself, maybe to learn now metal fabrication, to say now you are still using the same concept how a roof is made of, but now you are using now steel. So that knowledge from carpentry, you need to retrain yourself, yeah. So you might need to retrain and all that. As a company, you might need to retrain your employees, for example, or to move away from wood to steel roofing, yeah. So even doors, and we're moving to steel. So many to, but also we're also moving from now steel to aluminium, especially for windows, for example, and doors. You might need also to skill them also to understand that kind of change that is also happening. So even when you talk about the bent bricks, yeah, there was a time we used bricks which are not bent, for example, yeah, and after that we moved on to be using bent bricks. Yeah, nowadays, yeah, here and there we're using, but I know there's a government policy to say no contractor in Malawi, for example, has to use the bent bricks. So if you're a contractor, you'll not find nowadays a building that has been approved by the government is being constructed using bent bricks. So it means those people who are doing the bent bricks, they have to refocus to say, what else should I do? Because even in houses will also be to stop using bent bricks. So we should always look at to say change is always change. We said change is inevitable. We are using now cement blocks. So change is inevitable, and one day or the future, these things are going to change. And a lot of companies have died because of being in the past, not responding to the change that is happening within their sector. So what I'm trying to say in this particular video is to say it's always important for us to manage change and be able to look at the trends, what is happening, where are we going, and in that way we'll be able to achieve whatever we have achieved. I think this week there was a launch of, I think around the weekend, there was a launch of a vehicle that is the electric vehicle that is not using fuel. Yeah, so maybe you never know. You might have a filling station and all that. So instead of having filling stations now, we might need to have stations which are to recharge vehicles, for example. Yeah, so in the long run, that's what we need. So even an organization should be looking at to say, what is it that I can do maybe in 10 years time, in 20 years time? So that's kind of vision. Through your strategic plan, you should be able to manage the change to ensure that you are not stagnant, yeah. Because the moment you sleep a minute, you might find that other people have covered a distance. So you might be stagnant in your position of resistance, and you might not be able to achieve whatever you want to achieve in this life. Yeah, you might have to say, no, I think this company was big, but now it's no longer what? Big. So what is important for us to appreciate is that change is inevitable, but we need to manage change. And for the benefit of our organization, let's look at how can we manage change so that our businesses should continue being in the business. Thank you.